Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum, brothers. So last week we covered oneness, right? We went over oneness of God's existence and looked at some of the arguments. I want to do a quick thought experiment before we start today and get us to appreciate a specific point. So who believes that the world around them right now, this room around you, is real? Put your hand up. Shamira, to think about it a bit, he's like, maybe, maybe not. No, are you convinced of that?
Yes.
You 100% believe that?
Yes. Not 100%.
But you believe it enough where you feel it's the case, right? And you live like it's the case, right? Okay, so prove to me the world around us is real. Give me some evidence. Give me some arguments. Give me something.
Sensory experience.
What does that mean?
We can see it, touch it, smell it.
Okay, so
feel
it's
it.
touch it,
Yes,
smell it,
yeah.
taste it, see it.
Yes.
But how does that prove that the world is real? It could just be what you're seeing, smelling, tasting and touching is just an illusion. That's something that you're...
Plausibility.
Plausibility. What do you mean plausibility?
It's plausible that the world is real and exists more than other possibilities.
Okay, but now you change your tune. Because initially it was, yeah, it's real. You believed it. You engage in it like it's real. But it's a good move. It's a good move because, you know, there's no evidence. Let's shift gears a bit. But think about any other reasons. Why do we believe it? I believe it as well.
I think there's just to maybe going back to the sensory argument.
Okay.
Something like cause and effect. For example, if you touch something hot, you know, you're going to feel it immediately. You touch something cold or hot, you can sort of sense from...
So you're experiencing it.
It's an experiential kind of argument.
Okay.
That's what I would go on. But I guess sometimes how do you differentiate if you're dreaming or...
Yeah. How do you know you're not just a brain in a vat on Mars and some aliens are sticking probes into it, making you feel like you're here and feel all the things around you? You can't disprove that, right?
No.
Right. So, but we believe the real world is real. So why do you believe it?
Plausibility.
We'll get to the plausibility, but why were you convinced that it's real? I'm not trying to throw you off into some sort of
Mass transmission.
yeah, but
So throughout history, people say it's real, so that gets passed down.
but that's not why you believe it. You believe it based on your first-hand experience, right?
Yeah. As
And
in
even
that,
if
that affirms my position.
Yeah, but that's just people saying stuff, saying the same thing. Fine, they're saying it, but how do you know what you're reading is actually real and it's not a part of the illusion that you're witnessing?
It's true.
I think... Sorry, brother.
No. I was going to say, how do we know Rome existed?
Rome existed. Well, we base it on history.
But how do we know it's real?
Yeah, in that case, going down the line of argument we're going down, how do you know anything's real around you?
How do you define real?
How you experience it. I would say for this discussion, how you're experiencing it. So you feel it's real, right? It'll be hard if we get into the definitions of what real is.
Then even dreams can be real because we're feeling dreams then.
Okay, yeah. But in this case, we can say that dreams are a part of that package of illusion that you're experiencing. It's just a part of the illusion. But we don't feel that, right?
Sorry. Could we say that it's the only thing we have to experience? I mean, there's no choice, or this is the, you know, there is nothing other than what we experience on a day-to-day basis as individuals.
Yeah.
So we can't, there's no other choice, there's nothing else.
Fair enough, yeah. And you know what, that's a part of it, definitely. But there's something else I'm trying to get at. So we believe it's real. We function within it as if it's real. You know, we know it's real. But when it comes to giving evidence for it or proof for it, it's quite difficult to do that, right? Or to deny that the case of the brain in a vat is not correct, right?
Was there a philosopher, I forget the name, who said, I think, therefore I am?
Yeah, but that was about himself, the self. Right?
Okay.
We're talking about the
Not
world
so
around
much
us.
about the world around you.
That's why I wanted to give you a trick question. That's why I didn't say about yourself. I said the world around you. Right?
'Cause I don't think you can... Because what you're doing is you're using your five senses, your consciousness, to make a judgment as to whether the world is real or not, if that makes sense. You have all these inputs, But ultimately, I think it comes down to belief. That's the is that a rhetorical question? That's what my kind of thinking is going to.
Amar, you said something, bro, about what was it? What's most probable? Plausibility.
Mm.
Yeah. What was your point about plausibility?
So there are different possibilities. We can't be sure that one of them is 100%. So we look at what is the most plausible.
So what? Sure enough, basically. Right?
Sure enough,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So the point I was getting at is, the arguments, rational arguments, they serve a purpose. But when it comes to the things we believe in, not necessarily are they always based in rational arguments. And I would argue, and we've made this point before, but I just want to emphasize it again because we are covering rational arguments for God's existence, rational arguments for oneness, rational arguments for prophethood and revelation. Rational arguments have a role to play when it comes to certain beliefs that we hold, right? And they may encourage someone to a truth, right? But the key thing we need to understand is that rational arguments are not the be-all and end-all. They are not what's necessary for us to believe in things, right? I can guarantee we believe most of the things you believe in are not based on empirical data and may not even be based on rational arguments, right? I mean, if you do you don't have to mention them now, but if you do look at analysis of the things you hold or you believe to be true in your life, most would 100% not be based on scientific data, that's for sure, or scientific evidence, and many won't be based on rational arguments either. But you believe them to be true, right? It's an interesting human phenomenon if you think about it, right? Now, that's not to say that what you believe in is arbitrary. That's not what I'm saying. There's other reasons you believe in these things, right? So when it comes to the world around us being real, one could argue, well, yeah, it's what's most probable. It seems intuitive, right? That the world around us is real, and it makes sense. If functionally, from a utilitarian perspective, it makes sense. Then we can function in the world and do stuff. And it's a basic belief if you think about it, meaning you need it to function. If you don't believe the world around you is real, then how could you function in the world? Right? It'll be very difficult to function. So it's philosophically you can refer to it as a basic belief that people hold, right? And there are many basic beliefs we hold. Who can think of other sort of fundamental beliefs, basic beliefs that we hold?
That our parents are our parents. For
Yeah.
example.
Okay, not in a strict philosophical sense, but it's a fundamental belief, or a core belief every human holds is your parents are your parents.
Yeah.
Not based on scientific data. But it's based on something. What is it based on in this case?
Are your parents telling you that?
Testimony.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? Authentic and valid testimony. Testimony from someone you trust and you believe in. Right? What else could we think of?
This is going to sound really silly, but that you have a functioning brain, that you have a brain. You can't see your own brain,
Yeah.
but you believe that you have a brain, but also applicable to other body parts as well. You have a functioning heart, lungs, that kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah.
So just a basic thing, but it sounds, like I guess said, quite silly, but that's the kind of thing I was thinking about.
Yeah. Anything else?
Could you suggest that harm is wrong, like hurting other people? It's a kind of universal thing across
That
all
is
cultures.
I would say a sort of, not basic, but I would say quite an intuitive belief
Okay.
that people hold, and most people can't justify it philosophically, logically, especially if they come from a certain worldview. But, so for example, atheists would believe that harming an innocent person is wrong. Yeah, no one would disagree with that. It's an intuitive belief. We believe it's true and it's correct, but can you justify on atheism? No, you have an issue, right? Can you objectively ground it? No. So there are many beliefs like this, bro. Most of the things we believe in have reasons for us to believe in them, but those reasons are not always empirical or philosophical or logical, right? Rational, right? And it's important because most of the time, even in the Dawah, when you speak to people, there's an assumption amongst atheists that beliefs require evidence. And in some cases, beliefs require empirical evidence, empirical data, right? Or philosophical arguments. But most atheists would even go down, just stick to the empirical data. Whereas you have to realize, well, there's a place for everything. So yes, some beliefs require empirical data, but some beliefs don't. Like moral beliefs don't require empirical data. Science can't tell you about moral beliefs or moral truths because science is amoral, right? So it's about broadening our horizons and understanding this, right? That, you know, and this will help Muslims with, if you're talking to Muslims with doubts and stuff as well, right? They hung up on the argument, give me an argument, give me a solid proof. Well, not everything requires a solid proof, and in most cases when they say solid proof or argument, they're referring to empirical data or some sort of logical argument, right? So yes, we have good arguments in Islam, profound arguments, but they're not the be-all and end-all, right? To awaken the fitrah, as we discussed already, there are many keys that can unlock the fitrah. The logical arguments are just one key, right? An important key, especially for the times that we live in, but they are not the be-all and end-all, inshallah. Is that clear? Yeah, inshallah. Okay, so let's move on to carrying on that discussion. What we'll do today is we're going to move on to revelation, okay? So the Go-Rap, God's existence we covered, right? Then we looked at oneness. The next thing we're going to look at is revelation, okay? Now, when it comes to revelation, before we even get to the proofs of revelation, arguments for the Quran being from God, there's something else we need to touch upon. What do you guys think that is? So remember, you're in a Dawah conversation, you're speaking to someone, you've covered God's existence, you've covered oneness, the person's agreed that you're speaking to. Now you want to go to revelation. You want to introduce the Quran to them. You want to tell them about revelation, proofs for revelation. Before you give them proofs for revelation, what is important to establish before that?
I was thinking about the authenticity of the carrier of the message.
Okay, good. So you can do prophethood before revelation as well. So with this Go-Rap, God's existence, oneness, revelation, prophethood, you can mix it up. You can go any way. Sometimes you can even start with prophethood, right? Because when you can make an argument and show that the Prophet ﷺ was the messenger of Allah, then everything else is true by default, right? So good, you can do that. But what is it in regards to revelation that we need to outline, do you think, before we go into proof of revelation?
The type of proof that we're going for, like testimony, not necessarily empirical data.
No, not the type of proof. Because we look at different arguments, but...
I don't know if this has been covered, but obviously it would be a foundational belief in the existence of a God. If you've established an existence in a creator,
yeah.
then you can continue from that foundation. So you guys may have covered it in previous sessions.
What do you mean? Like,
so obviously you have to establish that there is a God first.
yeah, so we start with God's existence, yes. That's the most important thing. We begin with that. But say you're at the point now where God's existence is covered, oneness is covered, now we're at revelation. Before you give evidence for revelation, what do you think it's important to highlight to people? Especially considering the times that we live in and where people don't believe in revelation or consider the need for revelation and all of these things.
You would say that that God would, it makes sense for God to actually intervene in his people,
Okay.
to actually send prophets.
So it makes sense for God to send revelation.
Yes, sorry, yes, and
Okay.
revelation.
So this is so what we're talking about is the need for revelation.
Mhm.
Right? So you have to establish the need for revelation. That's what you
Yeah.
need to do with people. Because remember, let's take a snapshot. Okay, most people today, especially in the West, that you're going to be giving dawah to, what is their background going to be?
Liberal.
Yeah, they'll come from a Christian background, but what would their current worldview be?
Secular liberalism.
Yes, secular, liberal, so on and so forth, right? So what's that going to mean in regards to how do these people see or understand the idea of revelation from God?
I think the paradigm will be more of a paradigm of scientism, where the belief in science will solve all of the mysteries of
Yep.
the world.
So what do they think about revelation?
You'll say it's man-made.
Yeah, they'll say it's man-made. What else would they say? Skeptical about it, yeah? Myth, yeah? Old stories, outdated, stuff like this, right? So with such people, it makes sense to first get them to appreciate the need for revelation. Why is revelation important? And then move on to proofs for revelation, right? Because if you give them proofs, if they don't understand the need for it, it's not really something they're going to want to adhere to anyway, right? So, okay, let's start with need. So how would you establish the need for revelation? How would you do it?
Try using a worldly example, something that can get them to relate,
Okay, give us some examples.
like a teacher teaching their students through a book instead of just handing them the book.
Okay,
There needs
so
to be someone in between to translate that.
so what you're saying is that there's need to be taught.
Taught, yeah.
People need to be taught, right? What do they need to be taught? Let's be more specific.
Language.
Language?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
You could say that. I don't know if this is a good argument, but you could say that humans can't learn language on their own, and we've done tests in the past where you leave a baby on its own. That baby can't learn any sort of language when they grow up.
So the point you're making is you're using that as an example to say that we need to be taught.
Yes.
But what do we need to be taught? So what
Morals.
can revelation give people?
Morals.
Guidance.
Okay, morals, guidance. Good. Okay. So morals and guidance. Okay, so how do you now show the people that there is a need for moral guidance, or morals and guidance?
Again, a very simplistic example, but I'm thinking along the lines of a manufacturer designs a product. That product will need a manual. Likewise, we are created by God. Therefore, God would not create us without any reason or purpose for living. And the revelation is a means by which we can live and function and organize societies on a micro and a macro level.
Okay, good. So that's one angle, the guidance for purpose, right? So you can highlight that, look, whenever we make things as human beings, say we make a cupboard or whatever, we always write a manual. Why do we provide a manual? Because we want to provide guidance to the buyer or the user of how to use the product properly, right? Because we understand it. So God created us. We need guidance as far as the purpose of life, what we're doing, how to live. Therefore, we need a manual. So God provided us with a manual, right? You can even sort of really squeeze or add more emphasis to this example by highlighting that, look, we're limited human beings, right? When we make a product, we provide a manual. Why do we provide a manual to people?
To explain how to use it properly.
Yeah, but why? Why do we do that?
So they don't misuse it.
Why? So what?
So
Why does that bother you as a human being?
because you want the user to have the best experience of the product.
Why do you want them to have the best experience?
Because
What is it about you that compels you to want the user to have the best experience?
it just makes you feel good when somebody uses your product.
Okay,
to
so there's
its
something
full
about
capacity.
you
Yeah.
that internally you feel the need to provide guidance for
Yes.
the user. What is that internal thing? What could you put that down to?
So you're using it for the correct purpose.
Yeah, but why are you concerned about them using it for the correct purpose? What is it about you as a human being that is compelled
You
to...
don't want any harm.
Why? What drives you to feel this way? What is it inside you?
Reward.
Reward? What do you mean reward?
So, if you're selling a product and you want to showcase the product in the best way possible so that you can sell it more and make more profit.
Okay, but you can sell a product by doing good marketing, right? Why give a manual? Why be concerned about them using the product properly and taking care of it so they don't, damage it and they don't get hurt and all of this type of stuff?
Because you created it, so you want it to be not only the product, but the user to, take care of it best.
You're all right, but I'm trying to get at what's below that.
You can't. It's just something inside where you feel like, okay, this needs to be, used properly.
Okay, so what is that thing?
It's,
Would it be mercy?
Okay, good. So there may be mercy, yeah, concern, compassion, love, yeah. So there's these underlying human emotions that drive you to want to produce a manual so people can benefit from your product, use it properly, not break it, all of this type of stuff, yeah. But that's, yes, bro.
I think it's because you care.
You care,
basically.
yeah, care. Care is a nice word to use, right? You care. And that's us limited human beings. So if we have such care and concern towards others that are using our product, then what about the creator of the heavens and the earth? Something to think about, right? Mm-hmm. We're created by him, we're limited. We have these feelings and emotions that he's placed within us. But what about the most merciful, the most loving, the most compassionate? Wouldn't He be concerned for us and care for us and want to provide us with answers? Right? He, the one that's given us or facilitated for our most basic needs, right? Food, water, clothing, shelter. He provides all of these things. He wouldn't provide us with guidance, right? So if we can have that concern, then Allah definitely, by greater reason, has uncomparable concern for us, right? So He will provide us with guidance. Now the question is, do humans need guidance? Is there a requirement for guidance?
Yes.
Okay, so how do we start? Give me some reasons why you say that.
We were created weak. We get tired, we sleep, we're hungry, so we're clearly dependent.
Yeah, yeah.
So
But what about so these are physical needs, right?
And it's also spiritual needs.
Good, yeah.
Yeah.
So the
there's
spiritual needs, right?
like food for the soul.
Purpose, meaning,
Yeah.
direction, morals, right and wrong. We don't have the answers to these, right? And what's the proof for this? Who can prove to me that humanity today, in the absence of divine guidance and revelation, requires moral direction, existential direction, as far as what the meaning of life is and purpose of life is, right? What are the proofs?
Down to really subjective morality. Human beings, I believe, are not capable of constructing their own laws, values and morals of their own accord, because things could change subject to time.
So what's the proof for this? I agree with you, you're right, but what's the proof for this?
Things that were acceptable at one period of time may not be acceptable now.
Yeah.
That's what I was
Yes,
thinking.
good point, yeah. Things are constantly changing on a moral level. What wasn't acceptable 10 years ago is acceptable today. What isn't acceptable today will be acceptable in the next 10 years, 5 years maybe, right? There's no two countries in the world that completely agree on rules and laws. Every country has its own version of rules and laws that the people are to abide by, right? Age of consent is different in different countries. Certain crimes and the punishments for certain crimes is different in different countries, right? So it's all different. That shows what? That shows the subjective nature of the human experience. That humans can't objectively say this is good, this is bad, this is what we need to be doing. Meaning of life. Can two people ever agree upon the meaning of life in the absence of God? No, everyone has their own meaning they give themselves. So they make meaning up for themselves, but they don't know what the ultimate meaning of life is. So therefore there's a need for guidance, right? It's evident. And if there's a need, then the one that created us must surely have provided for that need, as we've seen already, right? So any other ways you can highlight the need for revelation?
Well, if we're talking from a purely worldly sense, someone can have everything they need physically, whether it's through health, wealth, socially, but they still can have something missing. And I guess that's where the need for spiritual guidance comes in.
Yeah, so there's a definite need for spiritual guidance. And
There's also a need to organize societies on a political and economic level. So we also need guidance, not only spiritually, but also on how to coexist with others, how to coexist within your own society and with other nations as well. So I would look at it more on a kind of that kind of thing where you're not just thinking about your own necessarily spirituality, but you're also looking at how to relate to others, how to communicate, how to
so ethics and morals.
Ethics and morals. That's the kind of area I'm looking at.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. So I think that's sufficient. Those are some very powerful points to highlight to people. That there's a need for revelation. There's need for guidance, ultimate guidance and revelation from the one that made us. Right. Now, when we get to revelation, the proofs for revelation, what would you guys use? So give me some arguments for testimony. Okay. So how would you make an argument from testimony for the Quran being from Allah?
Well, we have a chain going back all the way to the source, i.e. Allah Himself, from the Prophet ﷺ to his companions to the pious predecessors,
Yep.
all the way down to us. And each person in that chain can be verified to be trustworthy, no deficiency in their memory, etc. I don't know the other conditions, but
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, good. So testimony you can use. Yeah. Anything else? What are the arguments for the Quran being from Allah?
The Quran sets challenges where if you can accept those challenges and prove them to be false, then you can disprove Islam, but no one has come forth.
Okay, yeah. So that's a very powerful argument. The Quran itself, Allah says, if you're in doubt, as to what we revealed, then produce a chapter like it, right? And this challenge is made at least 3 times, as far as I can remember in the Quran, right? So the challenge, and what's interesting about this is that the challenge originally, obviously, was made to who? The Meccans,
Quraysh, yeah.
the Quraysh around the Prophet ﷺ. Now they were known to be the best in the Arabic language. They were the pinnacle of the Arabic language, right? So they had mastered the Arabic language. They were the greatest poets amongst them. Allah is challenging those people to produce something like the Quran. They can't do it. So what's the chances of someone today, when the language has decayed over the centuries, and now you don't even have where most people speak classical Arabic, Fusa? What are the chances of these people today meeting that challenge? Very little, almost impossible. The best poets at the time of the Prophet ﷺ could not meet the challenge. Right? So the chances are no one's going to meet it today. And this is further, there's a very good argument that Hamza shares, I think it's called divine, what's it called, man, subhanAllah. Divine, something, there's an argument he put on the linguistic miracle of the Quran. He's got an essay on it, and he's got a chapter in his book, The Divine Reality, as well. Definitely have a read of that. It's very powerful, because what he highlights is that it's the Arabic language itself. So the Quran, it has some very unique features, although it's in Arabic, right? But it doesn't conform to any of the known rules and laws of the Arabic language.
I think he highlights Surah Kawthar for
Yes,
that
yeah.
particularly.
Yes.
He highlights the rhetorical devices used, and there's so many different rhetorical devices used. I mean, if anyone was to try and use those rhetorical devices in a composition of 10 words, right, chances are it's going to turn into gibberish and not make any sense, right? Because it's like, say if I'm saying a sentence, say I want to say, I went to the seaside on Sunday and had a chocolate bar, right? Couple of words, yeah, it's nice, simple prose sentence. Now, say I wanted to add some rhetorical devices to this, right? Say if I, try to do, I don't remember what it's called, but we use the same letter, So I went to the seaside on Sunday and had a Snickers bar. So SSS, you do see the repetition of the letter. So that's one rhetorical device, alliteration I think it's called, yeah. And then imagine adding 5 more rhetorical devices to the same sentence. Imagine add 10 more. What's going to happen to the sentence eventually?
Collapse.
It's a collapse. There's only so much you can do, right? But what's profound about the Quran, even as Hamza highlights in Surah Al-Kawthar, is there's 10 words, but there are so many, I think over 40 rhetorical devices that are used in 10 words. Yet the chapter makes complete sense. It's impossible to do something like this, right? And that was one of the reasons he highlights why it was impossible for the Arabs to meet the challenge of the Quran. To meet that eloquence with the use of the rhetorical devices and all the other embellishments in the Arabic language, and to produce something so coherent without it turning into gibberish is impossible, right? And that's why he concluded that the Quran, although it's in Arabic, it does not conform to the known rules and laws of the Arabic language, and that is its miracle. That's one of the miracles and that's why Allah said, produce something like it if you doubt it, right? It's impossible to make that composition, right? So that's one argument you can use. What other arguments are there? Prophecies, okay. So
Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made certain predictions that came to be true, that at the time were seen to be impossible. For example, the Sassanid Empire ending and overcoming the Romans as well.
yeah, so prophecies that came true at the time in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, and these prophecies that have been coming true since after the life of the Prophet ﷺ, right? Who can think of other prophecies?
I believe it's the fall of the Byzantine Christian Empire.
Yeah, I think
Or
brother
Turkey?
mentioned that one. Yeah,
Okay.
that one's mentioned. Any others?
The Mecca or Medina becoming green
Yes, that's an end time prophecy.
When the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr were making a hijrah, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made three prophecies. One was the fall of
that was
Kisra.
Battle of Khandaq.
Khandaq.
Yeah, when he was striking the
The
stone.
rock. Yeah, the
The
stone.
rock. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but
And the
no, okay,
spark.
not okay. Sorry, I got my
Yes.
references wrong. But
But there were three prophecies, I think, that were made, right?
for the keys to the palace of Kisra, I believe it was. One was the fall of the Roman Empire, but correct me if I'm wrong. And I think I can't remember the third one now.
I don't remember. Anyone remember the narration?
So I think it was Sham to be given.
Yep.
And then I think it was either Persia, and then it was the keys to the treasures of Kisra.
Okay. So, and those things happen.
Yes.
Right. Yes. So, what about modern day prophecies? Things that, so green.
When
Already
the
turning
Arabs,
green.
sorry, when the Arabs build tall buildings, compete with each other.
That's a very
to-
obvious one, isn't it?
Music on the ears.
Abundance of musical instruments.
Yeah.
Or I swear there was one that music can be played on the ears or something like that. Like
Yeah. Or your thigh.
headphones.
Something about your thigh speaking to you, or something like this
Yeah.
as well.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the minor signs that women will be fully dressed but yet naked at the same
Yeah.
time. One of those.
Men will dress as women, women dress as men.
Yeah.
Fornication becoming, rampant on the
Yeah.
streets,
That's
etc.
where the
New
disease-
diseases coming
Mm.
from that as well.
Yeah.
New
And remember,
diseases.
these things at the time is impossible to
Yeah.
even predict, right? So, for example, the tall buildings, yeah. Now, the Arabs used to build underground because of the heat of the desert at the time. And the Prophet was predicting that the people, the Bedouins, would build towers and compete with each other, right? Now, for that to even happen, there has to be some recent historical events that took place. The Arabs had to discover black gold, right? Then the money comes in, and then you have the money to build the infrastructure and the buildings, these tall buildings. If you go back 60 years, 70 years, even amongst the modern day Arabs 60, 70 years ago, there was no buildings, tall buildings. They had no idea they would be building tall buildings today, right? So it's almost an impossible prediction to make, especially at the time of the Prophet over 1400 years ago. So prophecies is another one. What other arguments can you use?
I would say the uniqueness of the Quran compared to other books.
Okay.
So, as your brother mentioned, the chain of transmission.
Yeah.
Where no other book has that.
The preservation of the Quran. Yes.
Yeah, the preservation. And then also the Tawheed, so the oneness of God present in that book compared to other scriptures where you have, even in the Jewish Bible, even there you have certain verses and traditions where, even in the history where God had a wife and children and stuff like that. And of course, Christianity with the Trinity, and in Hinduism, Buddhism. So the uniqueness in
So
that
coherence
aspect.
of the message, in Tawheed, in regards to Tawheed.
Yeah.
Information and correction of previous scriptures.
That's another powerful one.
So, like, for example, in the Bible, when they speak about the time of Yusuf alayhi salam, and it mentions the rulers at the time being pharaohs, but the Quran corrected that and
King and Pharaoh, the distinction.
kings, yeah,
Yeah.
kings
Yeah.
instead of
So
pharaohs.
little nuances,
Little
of
nuances,
detail that the Quran gets accurate without the Prophet having access to this information at the time. Right? What else?
Could you also point to the ring composition
Yeah.
theory? Because it was an oral revelation, and for us to imagine that, you can construct something as intricate as a ring composition, which is not just once in the Quran, it's multiple times. We can identify it. It's just
it's
simply
sometimes on the level
impossible.
of a verse, on
Yes.
the level of a chapter
Mhm.
or a passage.
Mm.
It's very powerful because 23 years, parts of the Quran are coming down, verses, few verses. But when you read it and study it, Ayatul Kursi is one of them, as far as I can remember.
Yeah.
It's a ring composition. When you take Ayatul Kursi, right, if you to have the middle verse and then go out, towards the beginning and towards the end of the ayah, you'll see that the first verse and the very last verse of Ayatul Kursi, not the verse, but the first part and the last part of the Ayatul Kursi is the same topic. And then as you work inwards, it's the same until you get to the core, which is the center of the verse. So it's like the gemstone and then the ring that goes around it, basically. That's a ring composition. So it's very interesting too. I think there's a diagram online somewhere as well of Ayatul Kursi and the breakdown of it in this way. And to do that, you need to sit down, with a pen and paper and to see, can you match these verses up like this and write it like this so it forms a ring composition. But it's impossible. At the time, it's impossible to do. Because during the life of the Prophet ﷺ, the Quran predominantly was an oral tradition. So the companions were memorizing it orally. And yes, they were also writing it down, but on pieces of parchment and on leather and stuff. The Prophet ﷺ himself wasn't writing it down because he couldn't, write. So it was the companions that were writing it down on bones, parchment, leather, etc. So you can't say that they did that and then they formed the ring composition and then they went back to the Prophet and think it didn't work like that, right? Once it's revealed, the verse, right? Yes.
Could you use it also? I mean, this was I guess, argument more from 20, 30 years ago. The scientific miracle argument. I know it's not so robust now, but things like, for example, the stages of the embryo, something that clings, something that Prophet ﷺ wouldn't have known about, the water cycle, that kind of thing.
So you can use it or refer to this in your dawah because it is something profound. Let's start with that. It's quite amazing. Allah mentions certain things about the natural world and natural occurrences which are in line with our understanding of the world today. Okay? You can make it as a general point, but I wouldn't go as far as saying it's a miracle, right? Because there's a problem. When you're talking about miracles, you're talking about definitives now, right? So, for example, for us to claim a scientific miracle in the Quran, a couple of things have to happen. Number one, you have to say that this ayah of the Quran that you're referring to, say ayah X, for example, verse X, in the Quran, has only this one interpretation. So the meaning of this verse is, so say for example, I don't know, where Allah says that the heavens were one close part and then Allah cleft it asunder, split apart, okay? So say you want to connect this ayah to the Big Bang Theory, for example, as many people do, refer to it, Few things have to happen. One, you have to say that this verse only has this meaning in the Quran, right? And we know that there's many verses in the Quran that have more than one meaning, right? So some verses have three different meanings that the scholars have outlined, some verses have 5, some verses may have more, right? So this particular verse you have to say has only this one meaning, which we know you can't do anyway, right? Because we're not scholar, you can't just, no scholar would say that this verse only means this, right? Especially when it comes to the verses we link to the scientific miracles or scientific facts. Normally those verses are the ones that have a few different meanings or a scope of different meanings, right? So one thing you have to do is you have to say this verse X only means this, which you can't do anyway, right? Secondly, you have to go to the science and you have to say that this Big Bang model or this theory of the Big Bang or this particular model is the correct model. And again, you can't do that as well because science doesn't deal with absolutes, right? No scientist will tell you that this is an absolute fact. And when it comes to Big Bang cosmology, there are different models. There's like several different models. So you have to say, no, this model out of the 5 or 6 models that are there is the correct model. So can you see what you're having to do on both ends? When it comes to the Quran, you have to just pick the one meaning of the verse and say this is the correct one. When it comes to the science, you have to say pick one model and say this is the correct one. And then you link those two things together and say, look, miracle. But you can't do not either. It's impossible to do either.
Could you at least say that the Quran does not contradict modern science?
Yeah, but again, we're not saying it's not, because remember the Quran is not a book of science, right? It's not there to give you scientific facts. That's not the purpose. Allah sent us the Quran for guidance, to take us from His lordship to His worship. Very simple. And in doing so, Allah sometimes refers to the natural physical world, the things we can see and perceive around us. And normally when these things are being referred to, one major perspective that comes forward is from the vantage point of the observer, right? So, when Allah speaks about the sun and the moon and the stars, right, and the night and the day, how one envelops the other, it's from our perspective because we can see it from our angle. From our perspective on earth, when we look at the night and day, how does it look? It looks like that the light gets less and then darkness comes and it covers the light, and then in the morning the day breaks, the light comes and it slowly brightens and it gets turns to day. That's how it looks from our perspective, right? So it's addressing the human being that's seeing these things so that we can connect. So when we see these things and Allah mentions these things, we see it as a sign of Allah. That subhanAllah, who's doing this? I'm not doing this. I'm not in control of this. Allah is the one that's in control. So it leads us to His worship, right? So that's the objective of the Quran. Yes, there may be other ways, perspectives of looking at the same ayah as well, right? But obviously from a scientific perspective, day and night, how would scientists explain it? The earth is going around its axis, right? It's revolving around the sun, right? When it turns on its axis every almost 24 hours, that part of the earth that goes to the other, away from the sun, goes to darkness. The other side that faces the sun is daylight. That's another angle, perspective of looking at the same reality, right? So you can say one is a scientific perspective, one is an aesthetic type of perspective, or a first-person experience type of perspective, right? So sure, you can understand these verses from many different angles. So for example, Allah says that the sun and the planets, they're swimming in their orbits, right? All these bodies are swimming in their own orbits, right? So sure, you can reflect upon this in many different perspectives. Because if you look at it from a scientific perspective, it's speaking maybe about the orbits of the planets. We know the sun is orbiting around the Milky Way galaxy as well, so it's not stationary. So we can make those links, no doubt. But these are interesting observations, very powerful observations. The embryo, right? The different stages. And yes, they are in line with what modern science understands today. Right? I think Hamza, even in the paper he wrote against the scientific miracles of the Quran, he gives these examples, of the leech-like substance, and even the secular professors are saying, yes, it looks like a leech at this particular stage. So yes, it's very interesting, right? And especially considering 1400 years ago in the desert, this is where the revelation's coming down, yet it's in line with what we understand about reality today. Definitely talk about it. I would speak about it sometimes, but I'd be very careful. I wouldn't say scientific miracle, because that's inaccurate. Right? It's as we've seen, you can't, to claim a miracle, you have to talk in definitive terms, which you can't do in the science and you can't do with the Quran, because many of these verses, not all, but many of these verses have a scope of different meanings.
And I guess you're also making a presupposition that
you have to.
Science holds innate truth within it, and 100%. Then you're corresponding
this
with that.
This is a very powerful. So I think there is an inferiority complex here as well, to a degree. Right? Let's be honest, guys, yeah? 21st century, especially the past 50, 60 years, science has done some amazing things. So the science has evolved, it's developed, technology, right? Many breakthroughs. So it's not a surprise that science is seen as this, amazing discipline, which it is within its scope, right? But what's ended up happening is that because of this, bravado that science has received, what's ended up happening is that we have now put science on that pedestal, and we've tried to, justify the Quran by linking it to the science. Do you see what I'm saying? So we've tried to almost lift up the Quran by linking it to science, but we don't need to do this, right? Because the Quran is timeless, right? Science is continuously changing, right? It's a human effort, right? It's a beautiful tool, it's a beautiful method, but it's limited. It has its scope. So we don't need to use science to justify the Quran, right? Yeah, again, we can say it's interesting correlations, etc., but don't speak of it in scientific miracle. I don't think, it's not accurate, bro. We can't say scientific miracles, right? Unless the thing you're comparing, the verse of the Quran has only that one meaning, and the scientific point you're comparing it to has only one theory, and it's established to be 100% fact. Then you can link those two things together and say, yes, here's a scientific miracle. But neither are ever true. Right? So you can use it, but be careful with the words that you use. It's interesting, it's very compelling, so on and so forth, but don't say miracle. Let's be honest, inshallah. Yeah. Any other miracles?
I guess I got one more. So the uniform style of the Quran, where different books, they got different authors, and you can tell that it's written by different people, whereas the Quran's got one style, written in one book.
Yeah, so the style of the Quran is one. That's a very interesting point, because a few years back, I don't remember the academic's name, but I'll just share what I came across. There was this doctor who did a study on the language of the Quran and the language of the Prophet ﷺ, right? And what he noticed, and I can't remember the figures exactly, but essentially what the conclusion he came to was that the style of speech of the Prophet ﷺ is very different from the style of speech of the Quran. Right? I think something like 80% of some of the verbiage and words used were different in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ compared to the Quran, which is profound. Because from an Orientalist secular perspective, they would say, well, it's the same author. Prophet ﷺ is the author of the Quran, that's what they would say. But the language and the style of speech is very different. And to maintain that over 23 years, right, is profound if you think about it. Right? So that is a very good point. Yeah, the style and the language of the Quran. The authoritative nature of the Quran as well.
Could you perhaps mention the personality of the life story of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
Yeah, we're going to get to that. So Prophethood,
Okay.
we'll cover that in Prophethood.
Okay.
Before just focusing on the Quran, any other miracles or points you can make. So we talked about historical miracle. We've spoken about the scientific accuracies, if you like. We spoke about the coherence and the style of the Quran, the prediction, the preservation.
No contradictions as well in the Quran.
No contradictions, yeah.
Other books.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I would also maybe look at something like the abundance of memorizers of the Quran.
Brilliant. Yeah,
The
I was
Huffaz.
just thinking.
No,
That's actually a prophecy of the Quran as well.
subhanallah.
Because Allah said He has revealed it and He's made it easy for us to remember. Right? So who is there? Is there anyone that will memorize it? I'm paraphrasing, but that is a prophecy. And how many? I mean, tell me another book that's memorized cover to cover like the Quran in the world today, by millions of people across the world.
No, nothing.
And majority of the people that memorize the Quran are not Arabs.
Yeah.
They don't even understand the
And-
Arabic language.
And the ages as well. The ages of people who
Yeah,
are
young
memorizing.
children as young as what, 4 or 5 years old,
4, 5.
Yeah.
Full book.
and even elderly people.
Yeah.
You know, I've heard stories of elderly people in their late 70s and 80s who memorized the entire Quran.
I think there's something about the Quran which innately makes it easy to memorize
Yeah.
as opposed to other books. For example, because it's sent by the Creator, it's different to what we call the modern Bible.
Yeah.
Because it's from different authors, it doesn't flow as well. You know, it's just so easy. I mean, even memorizing Surah Fatiha it's just, or Surah Ikhlas, it's so easy. And I think the style of the Quran as well.
Yeah,
And
it's
also,
something.
I was also thinking about the fact that no other book makes you ponder as much as the Quran. And it asks you to reflect upon your own existence and the existence around you. And I think it's quite thematic throughout the Quran, isn't it? Where it says, in the alternation of, I'm not sure if someone could quote the verse, in the alternation of the night and day, do you not reflect upon? I'm not sure exactly. So I'm.
Inna fi khalqis samawati wal ardi, yeah. Indeed, in the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the alternation
it.
of the night and day are signs.
Yes. So it asks you to reflect, but it's maybe not so much an argument, but it's something that the Quran has, as opposed to the Bible or the Talmud or the Torah or the modern day versions of those books, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if you think about that ayah, just think about how profound that verse is. So let's look at this for a second. Yeah, what is Allah saying? Who could bring up the verse? Can someone pull up the verse? Chapter 3, verse 190. That's one place where it's mentioned. Inna fi khalqis samawati wal ardi wa ikhtilafil layli wan nahari.
Chapter 3, verse what?
3, 190.
Indeed, in the creation of the heavens and the earth and the alternation of the day and the night, there are signs for people of reason.
Okay, so let's reflect upon this. The verse starts with inna. What's inna in Arabic? Who's done some Arabic? Indeed, certainly. Yeah, it's a definitive, like absolutely. There's no doubt about what Allah is about to say now. Yeah. Inna fi khalqis samawati wal ardi. So what is Allah saying here? Indeed, in the creation. So this is point 1. Yeah. Allah mentions creation. Yeah. In the origination of the heavens and the earth. What's point 2? واختلاف الليل والنهار. Okay. Number 2 is the alternation. Okay. Alternation of the day and night. Indeed, in these things are signs for people who reflect. People of lub, right? Now there's 2 things Allah mentions here. And I mean, it would be sufficient if Allah said, Indeed, in the creation of the heavens and the earth are signs for people of understanding. Because if Allah was to say, Allah started with a definitive, indeed, absolutely, there's no doubt about it. In the creation of the heavens and the earth, does this cover everything? Creation of the heavens and the earth. Yeah, it covers everything, right? So, I mean, if you look at it on a surface level, you'll think it'd be more concise for Allah just to say, Na'udhu billah, but I'm just giving you an example. We may think with our limited thinking that it may be more concise for the ayah to say, indeed, the creation of the heavens and the earth, which covers everything, are signs for people of understanding, right? That, I mean, it makes sense on one level. But Allah goes further and He mentions, and the alternation of the night and day. For a long time I was pondering upon this. Why does Allah specify or add this additional piece of information in the alternation of the night and day, when Allah's already in the beginning of the ayah mentioned creation of the heavens and the earth? What do you guys think? Reflect upon this. I feel like I've come to a specific pondering on it, right? But I want to see what you guys come up with before I share my sort of reflection. So really think about that. Remember, the Quran is precise, right? There's nothing superfluous, nothing add-on or unnecessary. So whatever Allah mentions is very specific and it has a purpose. We all agree to this, yeah? Absolutely. So if Allah has already mentioned in the creation of the heavens and the earth, which covers everything, why is Allah specifying in the alternation of night and day?
Would it be like a rhetorical kind of device? Would it be a rhetorical question?
This is pondering, bro. There's no definitives here.
That's what my thinking is going, you know.
What would it be?
You know, if you know, if you ask a rhetorical question, you already know the answer, basically, you know, to that innately.
Well, it's not a rhetorical question here.
No.
It's more of a statement.
Would it be the fact that the alternation of the night and day, its cause is in the heavens, so the sun and the moon, or the earth spinning, but then we see it on earth.
Okay, so what you're saying is that Allah speaks about the whole, which is the heavens and the earth, but then Allah specifies a specific, which is something we can observe and appreciate.
Yes.
That's a very powerful point, mashallah. Yeah, that's one ponder. Yeah, I never thought of it like that. SubhanAllah. So Allah gives us a very specific example to emphasize further the point that these are signs, and here's a part of it that you can observe for yourself and reflect upon. The alternation of night and day, something we experience and that affects our lives directly, right? Night and day governs our lives.
Night and day, sun and moon.
Yeah.
Or moon and sun, which are both in the heavens.
Yep. So that's a good point. Anything else?
Allah gives us a sign to think about.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So the specific, yeah.
So he links the understanding with that example. So he gives us an actionable step to pondering.
Okay. Yeah.
That's I'm thinking of it.
So yeah, think about it. Scratch your heads. There's some very deep points here.
Should we take a break and then we...
Huh?
Should we take a 5-minute break to think about it and then we come back?
If you want to discuss it, yeah, discuss it amongst yourselves, yeah.
Where were you kind of going? Like, where is your...
There's many ways you can go with this,
Okay.
bro. There's
Right.
many ways. So remember, Allah is saying, it starts with absolutely, certainly,
Inna.
yeah. في خلق السماوات والأرض. So in the creation. So no doubt about it, in the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the alternation of night and day are signs for people of understanding or essence.
So would it be in the order that creation...
Maybe there's something there. I'm just asking you. I'm not. It's not a trick question. So there could be many ponderings you guys can have.
So Allah mentions heavens and earth, and then night and day. So we mentioned night first. So night with heavens. So when at night you look up, and then earth. So then it mentions day after night.
Okay, that's interesting.
So
there's some
the day
correlation
you're-
between what's
day-
mentioned
yeah.
first and what's mentioned second. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else? So I'll give you what occurred to me. Yeah. Is that first Allah mentions in the creation of the heavens and the earth. So khalq is creation, right? So Allah is outlining that there is substance, there's matter there. There is a creation there. That's the first thing that's been out. And generally, that there's all of this stuff around you. There's atoms, there's molecules, there's all of this stuff going on. There is a world around you, yeah? And then Allah mentions the function of the matter that exists. So Allah is outlining to us, not only is there a creation, but the creation is functioning. وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ is the alternation of the night and day. So not only do you have to account for, if you want to deny God, that there is a world around you comprised of atoms and molecules and things, but you have to also account for that this world is functioning, that there is order behind these things, right? We don't just live in a splatter of a universe, right? Where there's just atoms and molecules and that's it. Everything is ordered. Think about that. Everything's functioning, right? The planets are revolving in their orbits around the sun's orbiting around the Milky Way galaxy, the night and day, the earth is tilting on its axes and spinning. It's at a certain point from the sun. So all of this is function. So not only is there creation, but then there is order behind that creation. Now, can you see how this makes it difficult for someone to now deny God even more? Because not only do they have to account for the physical world that exists around us, but they have to also account for the function and the order of this physical world. Right? That's something that came to me. Allah knows best. This is probably one of the wisdoms that Allah is highlighting to us, that look, there's creation, and that creation is functioning, is working. You know, it's like someone could show you, Brother Tariq's wearing a watch, mashallah, yeah? Someone could show you a watch. It looks like a watch, but it's just still. Nothing's ticking, nothing's moving. Especially if it's a mechanical watch, it's just still. And then you can have a mechanically functioning watch where you can see all the gears turning and churning and everything's functioning and ordering. So not only is there a watch or material comprised together which forms what we call a watch, but it's also working. It's functioning. It has a purpose. It has an order. Right? That makes it even more difficult to deny that, there was a watchmaker.
So it's like we can show regularity, stability, and uniformity.
Yeah, there's order. Things are functioning. Things are moving. They're obeying laws, yes.
And continuity, I think.
Yeah, continuity. And it continues to function in that way. The laws of physics hold, right? Every day there's a night, and then there's a day.
There's no glitch.
There's no glitch, yeah.
There's no error in the codes or...
Yeah, so it's amazing when you reflect and ponder upon these ayah. Yeah, you see the arguments that emerge from the verse itself. We'll wrap up there, brothers. May Allah bless you, inshallah. We'll finish off probably next week now, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.